Carl Jung once said that life really begins at 40. Before that, you are just doing research. This sounds strange because we usually view 40 as the beginning of the end. We have built a whole culture around the fear of getting older. We call it a midlife crisis and imagine people clinging to their youth by making impulsive choices. We focus on physical decline, the first few gray hairs, and the loss of youthful energy. But Jung saw it differently. He believed the first half of your life is just a preparation period. It is a long stage where you gather information about the world. You learn how the machine works and where you fit into the gears. It is not a period of decline, but the start of a radical awakening. Think about those first 4 decades. You are essentially a student of the world. This is the exploration stage. You spend these years asking everyone who you should be. You look to your parents, teachers, and bosses for permission and guidance. You watch your neighbors to figure out what kind of car to buy or what clothes to wear to look successful. You are building a life, but you aren't really the one driving yet. You are gathering data like a scientist in a lab. You learn how to handle a professional career, how to manage your money, and how to survive a heartbreak. You are laying a heavy foundation, but you haven't moved into the house. You are still out there doing the research. During this time, you develop what Jung called the persona. It is a social mask. We all have one for the office, one for our parents, and one for social media. This mask helps you navigate the world and gain approval. It is a survival tool that keeps you safe and helps you fit in with the crowd. The problem is when you forget that it is just a tool. You spend 30 years making sure your persona looks perfect to everyone else. You focus on your job title, your status, and your reputation. You work incredibly hard to be exactly what society expects you to be. On the outside, you look like a success. You have the markers of a good life, but inside, you start to feel hollow because the mask is heavy and it doesn't reflect who you really are. Eventually, the mask starts to crack. This usually happens right around 40. You might have everything you wanted, but you feel a deep, quiet emptiness. It isn't a loud or dramatic feeling. It is a whisper you can't ignore. It is a silent question while you are driving home or trying to sleep. You ask if this is all there is to your existence. You realize you have been living a life designed by someone else's rules. You see, the persona is just a shell. You spent decades researching how to please others, but almost no time figuring out who is actually living behind that mask. You start to realize that the life you've built is a suit of armor that no longer fits. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This transition from the external world to the internal world is a journey we all face eventually, no matter where we live. When these cracks appear, people get scared. They think they are having a crisis and try to glue the mask back together. They buy a new car or change their appearance, hoping to feel young and secure again. But the cracks are a gift. They let the light in. They show you there is a larger, deeper person underneath the social expectations. This is when you shift your focus. You move away from what the world wants and finally ask what you want. You transition from social expectations to a personal inquiry. You realize you don't want to just be seen by others. You want to be truly understood. But no one can truly understand you if you are still hiding. The research phase is finally over, and the real story of your life is just starting. You are no longer just collecting data. You are finally ready to live the truth that the data has revealed. Now that the research is done, a process Carl Jung calls individuation begins. This is a fancy word for a very simple thing: becoming who you actually are. It is the journey of becoming a whole person instead of a collection of roles. Up until now, you have been a son, an employee, or a friend. But who are you when you aren't performing for anyone? Individuation is the work of the second half of life. It's the moment you realize that the mask you've worn, your persona, is only a tiny fragment of your total self. When you start this journey, you stop looking for others to tell you that you are doing a good job. You stop needing the gold stars to feel like you matter. This is not a simple task, but it is the most important journey you will ever take. You move from external validation to internal integration. You begin to look inward and ask what parts of yourself you have left behind. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being honest. You are finally trying to fit all the pieces of your personality together, even the ones that don't look good in a social media post. To become whole, you have to face something Jung called the shadow. If the persona is the bright mask you show the world, the shadow is everything you've hidden in the dark basement of your mind. These are the parts of your personality that you were told were too much, too loud, or too weird. Maybe you were told that being sensitive was a weakness, so you buried it. Maybe you were told that being ambitious was greedy, so you hid your drive. These repressed traits don't just go away. They sit in the dark and wait. They often show up in the way we judge other people. Jung writes about this in his book, Man and His Symbols, explaining that we cannot be healthy if we ignore these hidden parts. Facing the shadow is uncomfortable. It requires you to look at your fears and flaws without flinching. You have to admit that you aren't the good person your persona claims to be. This integration isn't about becoming bad. It's about taking the power back from your secrets. When you own your anger, you can use it for courage. When you own your sadness, you can find real empathy. You have to accept your darkness to reach true maturity. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. By integrating the shadow, you stop being a cardboard cutout and start being a real human being. You gain a depth that you never had before. As you work through this, your priorities start to shift. You begin to transition from doing to being. In the first half of life, you were obsessed with doing things, getting the degree, buying the house, climbing the ladder. Now, those things don't satisfy you like they used to. Your interest in competition and ambition starts to fade. You no longer care about being the best in the room. Instead, you start craving meaning. You want authentic connections. You would rather have one real conversation than 100 shallow, small-talk interactions. You start listening to your inner voice. It's been there all along, but the noise of societal demands was too loud. Now, you turn down the volume of the world to hear what your soul is saying. You stop saying yes to things out of guilt. This is because your inner voice is finally louder than the expectations of others. You start to value time more than money. You value peace more than status. You stop trying to fit into a mold and start creating a life that feels right from the inside out. You are finally learning to live for yourself, not for the audience that has been watching you for years. You are moving away from the surface and diving deep into the truth of your own existence. The internal shift you are feeling is supported by the way your body changes as you get older. It is not just your mind changing, it is your physical brain adapting to your life. In your brain, as you move through middle age, you tend to become more emotionally balanced. You process information differently, often becoming less reactive than you were in your younger years. You are less likely to be upset by the same social pressures that caused you deep anxiety when you were 20. This natural balance provides the quiet space and steady nerves needed to face the truth without being overwhelmed by the fear of being rejected. Researcher Brené Brown describes midlife as a time of letting go of who we think we are supposed to be. It is a period where the walls we built to protect ourselves start to come down. This is the moment we finally begin to embrace the person we actually are. We stop listening to the rules that have guided our steps for decades. We stop trying to prove our worth through how much we do or the titles we hold. This letting go is often messy because it requires us to walk away from the versions of ourselves that society liked. But this process is necessary for a real life. You are moving from living on a programmed autopilot to living with a real purpose. You are no longer just a passenger. You are finally taking the wheel. As this old, stiff version of yourself falls away, a new hunger begins to show up. This is what the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl called the will to meaning. He believed our main goal is to find a reason to exist. In the first half of life, we confuse success with meaning. We tell ourselves that if we reach a certain money goal or get enough attention, we will finally be happy. But as the individual reaches midlife, those outside markers lose their shine. You might have the promotion or the comfortable home, but you still feel like something big is missing. This is because you are shifting toward what Abraham Maslow called self-actualization. This isn't about gaining more things. It's about becoming more fully yourself. Maslow argued that self-actualization is the process of using your unique gifts, regardless of whether it brings you fame or status. You start to rewrite your own life story on your own terms. You stop asking what the world expects of you, and you start asking what you expect of yourself. This shift requires you to overcome a deep fear of the unknown. It's scary to step away from the crowd, but it is the only way to find a life that is actually yours. The reward for this struggle is a sense of wholeness that you couldn't have found in your youth. This is why researchers often find that life satisfaction scores peak after 40. There is a deep joy in finally being comfortable in your own skin. You no longer feel the need to perform or to hide your flaws from others. Carl Jung talked about his own journey into these depths in his private writings, known as the Red Book. He realized that true freedom only comes when we accept all parts of ourselves. We are not just the good parts we show the world. We are also our mistakes, our hidden fears, and our messy feelings. When you accept the whole picture, you stop fighting yourself. You find an inner peace that doesn't depend on what happens in the outside world. Your value is not something you have to earn. It is something you already have. The research phase of your first 40 years has finally come to an end. You have the knowledge to stop rehearsing. The mask of the persona has done its job, and now you can put it away. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the most real chapter you will ever write. You are finally home, and you truly understand who you are.